our community, our property, and everything else. Hey, Rich, let me just show you that picture. What does that look like? But I just want him to see what this picture looks like, and I will leave the picture here. To me, that's an eyesore, and it's been sitting there since November of last year. If you cared about the neighborhood, you own that property, why don't you clean it up already? It should be a little bit neater. There's bicycles on that property. There's junk on that property. There's if I'm not mistaken, in the back corner, you can just barely see it. Wood chips. There's stuff there that could cause a fire. Why hasn't any of that stuff been cleaned up yet? Thank you very much.
My name is Devoice Jenkins. I live on 183 Hamilton Avenue. Again, my concern is so many houses on that property. It's not, the building on the property is not a problem, it's just so many of them. When we mention kids, 2 houses down, where do those kids play? In the street. They've got 2 basketball courts, basketball, whatever, and that's where they play, because they cannot play in the back where they rent from, okay? And that's where these kids are going to be. I'm concerned about that. Also, again, the flooding, although you say it's not a problem, if those 6 houses is only for 1 car, where are the other cars going? On Hamilton Avenue, and that's going to mess up with the flooding. Also, the house that you're talking about that you own, why is there a for sale sign on it that just went up?
Any other members of the public?
Hello, I'm Ryan Steinberg of 171 Hamilton Avenue, directly across the street. And I'd just like to point something out from, this is straight off the Stratford website, and basically says that the Office of Planning and Zoning is committed to the preservation of health, safety, and quality of life and general welfare for the residents of Stratford. I haven't heard any personal attacks here today. Everyone has an interest. We, the builders, have an interest, and we as residents of the community also have an interest. Our interest is to preserve the property value of our homes and the community we live in. I feel that proper concern here has been raised today over traffic, health, safety, and well-being of the neighborhood, as well as just, if we're going to look at the pure economics of it, property values, which obviously have been disputed whether they will go up or down to this project. I happen to side that I believe that they will go down when you add 10 additional units in such a small area. I'd also like to point out, many years ago, there was another building there. You could put a duplex. You could put 4 units. 10 units are an excessive number and would adversely affect this neighborhood. Thank you.
Any other members of the public?
Good evening. My name is Melva R. Johnson. I live at 24 Watkins Street. My husband just spoke, but I just felt that I needed to speak on behalf of the person, a property owner that lives adjacent to the property that they want to refine. I know exactly where Mr. Lance is. I used to be a PTA parent that used to meet in that house where his property is now. I know where it is. The person who lives there, she was not able to come because she has been in a convalescent home. They said they had spoken to her in November or something of what they wanted to do. I alerted her that you got to check out what's going on with that property next door to you. She keeps her property up. She's put a lot of finances in it to build her property up. I feel that it is detrimental to her property, that the property value will go down with that many units. I'm not saying not to build, but it's just too many. And I feel that the safety have been addressed. I do feel that Ms. Phillips, she asked a question of Attorney Knotts when he was here, that in marketing value, if one of those places are not sold, or two, what are you going to do with them? You're going to then rent to someone, not to a homeowner. I'm not saying someone buying. It's going to be rented. And those people are not going to adhere to the, I mean, you can say about the condominium association and all, but they do not have the law always on their side. It takes time to do it. But I feel that it was some untruths told that they had spoken to the homeowner that has adjacent property there, because she was in a convalescent home at the time for rehab. And I know that for a fact. I told her that you need to check out what's going on with that property there. And I've said it to them, and I just happened to hear because someone called me and told me that this meeting was going to be tonight. And I came because of that, because I don't feel that a lot of times you're saying some untruths that this is going to be done or that's going to be done, or builders when they're trying to make finances. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm not saying for him not to build it. I am just saying that because of the safety, because of the property value of the homes that are adjacent to that, and because of the flooding and so many other things, I do know I live on a small street, and when a fire truck, police, or anything try to get down there, that is a safety problem, because I have neighbors who have a driveway and do not park in them. They park on the street because they have 3 and 4 cars per household. It is a safety hazard, even for children. I go down that street every day. I'm told that I speed sometime. I do not. I try not to. But I do know that it's a safety hazard in all respect. Safety and everything else, and because of the property value. Thank you.
Any other members of the public? Any other members of the public? Any other members of the public? If not, Attorney Knott, if you'd like to provide rebuttal. Oh, wait, is that a speaker?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
what we've done in the previous meeting too was when the public had spoke, we've asked people to raise their hands in both favor and against the petition, people in the audience.
Yeah.
Can we
Well,
have that count again?
There's an issue because we have people at multiple hearings now, so that would double count in many ways. So we could limit it to people who haven't shown up to previous hearings, but there's no way to verify that. Who here hasn't appeared to the previous hearing? Please raise your hand. Okay, of those, who's in support of the application? In support of building the project? Yes. Who's in opposition? And is anyone don't know, they're just neutral to the application, just here to learn? Okay, can I see those hands again? Yes. If you haven't appeared before the commission before, we're trying to get an accurate count of who's for and who's against. Yeah.
This is meaningless, Mr.
Yep.
Chairman.
Yeah, it's,
Mr. Chairman, it's impossible to get an accurate account. This is highly inappropriate. I've never seen anything like this.
we also have the petitions also submitted to record as well.
Yeah, I don't think this is highly inappropriate, actually, because this is what was done in previous meetings. So
Based
I
on
really
your
take
request.
exception.
Let's
I take
just take
exception to
8
you saying
counts.
that.
Based on your
You're pretty
Order.
much telling-
individual.
Order.
I'm sorry. What you're doing
Gentlemen.
is you're telling people it's inappropriate for them to. be in
Commissioner, I'm shutting you
opposition or in
down.
favor.
I want to see the hands again. We're getting a count. Can I see the hands again? One, two. Yes, it's against. One,
Control of your meeting, Mr. Chairman.
25.
Now, are these ones that spoke or didn't?
25 people present at this meeting who
25.
also raising their hands against the hearing. Ay, ay, ay.
You allowed it, sir.
The record reflected 0 other than those who spoke. In terms of number of hand, Mr. Knott now has the floor.
Yeah, just a couple of things. Mr. Kadim had indicated that he had not seen the revised plan, but he was one of the people to whom I sent a letter on April 21st enclosing the revised plan. Mr. Tavares from 1372 South Avenue talked about the lack of sidewalks on Hamilton Avenue. There is no provision in any of Stratford zoning regulation or subdivision regulations that would obligate this applicant or any applicant to install sidewalks on Hamilton Avenue. If the neighbors on Hamilton Avenue want sidewalks, they can petition their councilman, and the town, if it feels that sidewalks are appropriate, can install sidewalks and assess the abutting property owners for the cost of same. Mr. Fenderbaugh, who was the fellow to whom I sent the letter, and he called me and I sent him the drainage study, he was criticizing my legal words that if this, we could do this, we may do that, the zoning, the condominium rules and regulations can have this and it can't have that. He's saying, well, you should know definitively that they do or they don't. It costs about $15,000 to draw up condominium plans, bylaws, public offering statements, and we don't do that prior to obtaining zoning approval. So it's inappropriate for us to have provided you with that information. And then Mr. Seibert from 171 Hamilton Avenue showed up late, and he started out by saying, why do we need this variance change? Why do we need this zone change for this project? Well, I would point out to him and remind you that we're not asking for any variances. We are not asking for any zone changes, that this application conforms in all respects to the existing zoning regulations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, folks.
Yes. No, Planning and Zoning Commissioner, Mr. Hibansky also wanted to clarify something about the application.
Oh, this was just to address when the Planning and Zoning Office received the revised plans. They were stamped into our office April 22nd. I don't remember at what time, but it was Friday at some point midday.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
I have a couple of statements, questions for Attorney Knott. When I actually want to comment on some things I've heard from the public. Ms. Rivera said about safety and sidewalks. One of my major concerns is that now we're talking these 3-bedroom units, and I had mentioned earlier about teenagers with cars, but what about young children? They can be walking out, from what I was told, is that there would be a front stoop at the front door. So these kids could walk out off the front stoop and literally be in a driveway that cars are going to be going back and forth in, because there's really, it's not a one-way, so cars can go in or out. So for safety, that, as a parent, that really concerns me, that it could take a split second for a child to walk out that door and possibly, a tragedy could happen. There's no sidewalks, there's no walkways, no pathways.
My kids go out the back door of my house.
Oh, my kids go out the front door of my house.
Well, I mean,
Gentlemen, this testimony is becoming irrelevant. Please answer the question, Mr. Knott.
well,
Who cares what side houses do you personally go out of? That's irrelevant to the application. Answer the question.
what is the question? He made a statement, not
Well,
a
the question is about safety. About safety. How come there's no walkways, pathways that aren't actually part of, I'm going to call it the road or the parking lot?
This is the way that the
property.
project was designed, and this is the way that we're presenting it to you. We feel that it's a reasonable proposal. It satisfies all of your regulations.
But to meet safety concerns, it's a little careless.
Well,
I have the right to cross-examine a commissioner. What evidence do you have?
What evidence do I have? Well, let's see. You get a child that can walk out a door. It doesn't have to be evidence, but it has to be just common sense. And that's part of being a zoning commissioner, is having the common sense. Me, I have children. I know when my children walk out my front door, they have a pathway to walk. They also have sidewalks. And I see how cars fly down, whether it be in a parking lot, in a shopping center, or a parking lot at a small retail space, or it be just a street in general. We see how cars move and we see how cars drive. It takes a split second for a child to walk out a front door and get hit by a car and there be a tragedy.
2 questions. One of them directed to Attorney Knott, because you raised the question that popped in my head. But the secondly,
Chairman,
to
just a point of order. After the rebuttal, is it common to redirect questions to the applicant?
if it's pertinent to the testimony that was given, commissioners might have questions about testimony that was given for rebuttal purposes that the applicant could answer. It is in the plan of conservation and development to encourage sidewalk creation. There is precedent for this with previous zoning stipulations. Most recently, a 10-condo unit across the street from DeLuca Field, the little Main Street side, was stipulated to have sidewalks. So zoning commission has that power to do so, whether it's in a final site plan review or some stipulation before that. The question being, would the applicant be open to consider putting a sidewalk on that part of Hamilton Ave?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Just for clarification, the subdivision regulations require sidewalks. The zoning regulations do not. But in answer to your question, we would agree to a stipulation for sidewalks on one side of the street, I think.
Any other questions?
Mr. Knott, Attorney Knott, can you also, one of the residents asked about garbage and dumpsters, but I didn't hear an answer to that in your
I thought I saw. Yeah.
is it on the
Yeah, there's
landscape?
the location
Did I miss
on
it?
Yeah,
the
it's located on the site plan.
Yeah. I saw it when I was looking at this earlier.
Can you just point out to me where it is so I'm clear?
It's to the left of the rear duplex.
To the left of the rear, okay, refuse area. Okay. So it's in between the 8 parking spots and the duplex is the refuse area. And is there wide enough space for the garbage trucks to access that? How are the garbage trucks going to access that? And also recycling trucks, is there going to be recycling there as well?
Well, to be honest with you, more than likely what's going to happen is that the town garbage men are going to pick up garbage pails in front of every house. That's what usually happens with these small condominium projects. We show a refuse area on the plans, but typically the Public Works Department does pick up garbage at each house on these small condominium projects. That's what happens.
So everybody wouldn't be bringing garbage to one dumpster.
Right.
It would be, they'd
I
have
mean,
cows.
we have a provision for that if the town ends up not doing it, but they usually do.
Okay. Garbage was one thing. There was
I believe it
the
was
snow removal was brought up as well. Is there a plan for snow removal?
Well, I don't know,
Yeah, there's a plan for snow removal. It's also, everybody keeps forgetting that this is an association. An association, each one of the owners will pay a common charge. In that common charge will be landscaping, will be snow removal, will be garbage removal, and it'll address all of the issues. 90% of these things that are being asked of what's going to be going on aren't decided until I get through zoning. So we can't make decisions, concrete decisions. So we say we could do this and we could do that. But these decisions can't be made until we get an approval to actually build the project. So we do have plans. Yes, snow removal has been taken into consideration. Garbage has been considered. The possibility of sidewalks has been considered. All of the driving areas, the architecture, the engineering, everything that needs to go into this project has been taken into consideration. I'm willing to spend $1 million in this neighborhood. Nobody else is. So if I'm going to spend $1 million into this neighborhood and increase the taxes that are going to be collected on what's now a $2,100 tax property to over $40,000 or $50,000, yes, I'm going to take all of this into consideration. So when questions like this are asked, I'm baffled because you mentioned common sense. And I've looked at this with a lot of common sense, and I keep saying to myself, why? Why are people asking these questions that aren't relevant, that aren't going to matter whether I build or I don't build? Flooding's still going to be there. You know, the street situation, the pass-through is all going to, all of these things are still going to happen whether I build one or whether I build 10. So, yeah, snow's going to be taken care of.
Removed from the property or stored on the property?
Depends on how much falls.
Mr. Nutt, do you have any other rebuttal at this time? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to close this hearing.
Motion to close.
Do I have a second? Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Being the only petition that's active right now, I'll entertain a motion to close public hearing at 9:24 p.m.
I make a motion.
Do I have a second? Although, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion is passed. Public hearing is closed at 9:24. We're going to stay in here for the administrative session. The town attorney has sent out a memo to all land use and other appropriate boards that...
Mr. Chairman, I'd request a 5-minute recess.
Yes, I was going to get into that as well. I'm going to gavel out a 5 to 10-minute recess because we've been at a hearing for 2.5 hours, so I want to give people a chance to get up and move around for a moment. We'll convene back here in 5 to 10 minutes. So everyone take your seats. Yeah, that's just for deliberations. People can witness, also otherwise called upon, they can't have the floor. Yeah, those look very...
seating and then an extension for...
Yeah, the law office and insurance office right there. I have to recuse myself from that one. My insurance purpose for that. Actually, it's in one of those units. Yeah, okay. I'm going to call this zoning administrative session to order. Yep. I'm going to call the zoning administrative session to order at 9:34 p.m. Just before we start, I just want to inform the public that this is our administrative session. They usually are held in room 213, but due to not having the best recording equipment in the town, it's actually better to have them in here because there's video and better audio equipment. So if there's ever, it leads to better public transcripts. Also, public, this is not a hearing at this point. This is really just discussions between the zoning commission and staff about testimony that was giving and more of a housekeeping administrative stuff that's not necessarily at the public hearing level. So there is no public comment at this section of the zoning meeting, but you're more entitled to witness it. The only people who, other than the commissioners, who have the floor is anyone that commission calls upon to have the floor. Of that said, we don't have 1625 Stratford Avenue in hearing. That's continued, so that's off the table. Can't be raised. Neither can James Farm Road. So that only leaves 164 Hamilton Avenue.
Mr. Chairman, motion to take 164 Hamilton Avenue off the
Do I
table.
have a second?
I have a second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. It's off the table. I'll start off with a question. Since we were just given a site plan tonight and the zoning office was just given a site plan Friday morning or Friday afternoon, do people feel comfortable voting on the subject tonight, or do they need a time to weigh the issue?
I do not.
I'm comfortable voting tonight.
I feel comfortable voting tonight, too.
I just think there are a lot of issues here on the table. I think we need to, I think the petitioner came back and tried to revise something, but now we didn't hear from police, fire, or traffic. That was a big issue with the constituents. I don't know. John Casey was the only one who today, revised the drainage.
And usually the
And
police...
I think the drainage is an issue. I kind of think that building this might help that issue, though. The water's got to go somewhere, and if they've, put something into place, that it will, if not, it's still going to stay the same.
And you raise a very interesting point, too, which is kind of the argument Commissioner Poser and I were having about public safety. Our police and fire are the experts
Right.
with that sort of traffic flow or accessibility flow. So having that statement on record or that sort of
I know
review
that people
on
that-
record would suggest that, because technically, by Commissioner Poser's logic, every property is dangerous, because it could just take 1 second for something to happen at any given point in time. Tree could fall down, someone could go into a road, someone could fall off a deck or trip over something, whatever it might be. Under that logic, anything is. That's why we rely on the experts, police, fire, engineering, health department, conservation office, all these different departments in our town to kind of review public health and public safety issues. So, you're selling my point on maybe we should have a little more time to review it to get those sorts of comments into record.
I think that will show the people, what the professionals think about the situation. I know they don't live there, I understand that. But every road in this town has an issue at some point. We can't be perfect in all those situations. Do we want safety? Absolutely. Do we want, firemen to get down to these places? We do. You may not think we do, but we do. They have met all the regulations.
Yeah, and I think hearing...
But I agree.
Yeah, because that would verify...
I have sympathy with the public, and I do think that we need the police, the fire, and the traffic to review this new plan and let us know what they think.
Well, I think, Linda, I think you're making a good point. I think the question, though, that the chairman was asking is, are we in a position, each of us, to vote on it tonight?
Well, no, then I'm going to say no.
And hearing your argument, I'm inclined to agree with that as well.
I just like to clarify something here. When I'm talking about kids possibly walking out of a house, you got to remember this is being presented to us as essentially like single-family homes. And I don't know any single-family homes that walk into a parking lot out the front door. And that was my point when I was saying about the potential for a tragedy to happen or an accident to happen with a child is these are being presented to us as these 6 separate single-family units, which are really being presented as 6 single-family homes. They're going to have yards behind them, and they have garages, and
Okay.
I don't know anything that comes out
Even
into
so,
a parking lot.
Folks, I think we're getting off the thing. We're debating it, and we haven't even made a motion. Mr. Chairman Fuller has simply asked, are we in a position to vote tonight so he can make a direction? I wanted to comment back on that, is that for me, in all fairness, even to the applicant and into the residents, but particularly to the applicant who has appeared before us more than 2 times, I would say, that I would like to give him an answer back. One way, an up or a down. I'm not thrilled that I didn't get this until earlier, but we've spent enough time talking about it. I've kind of caught up. I can live with we do another meeting, but I do want to give some courtesy to the fact that we have spent 3 meetings on this, and it does cost money and the public to coming out. I'd like to give the gentleman an up or down vote and then allow him to move forward with whatever direction he would like to come. And if we do give that opportunity to debate it tonight, he will get some information back directly from us, not just questions of what our thought process is. So I am fine to vote tonight, but if the commission as a whole wants a delay, I can live with it.
How long does it usually take for police and fire to respond? I know each site's different, which presents their own unique review process.
I mean, it's always different. I mean, sometimes we don't get staff comments, and then was in this case. I mean, I don't think we had staff comments during the original site plan, and whether or not we would have received staff comments regarding this site plan, I don't know. So how long they usually take? I mean, I think reasonable time is 2 weeks, to review. I mean, but that could probably be done in a few days.
One option is table into the next administrative session because the public hearing is technically closed. So new other in-town agency review, there's really no new evidence to enter into record. So it would be at that point debating the merits of the evidence that was presented. The other option is making a decision tonight.
The other option would be to make a motion to approve pending verification from fire and safety.
That's another option. It does kind of pigeonhole the commission that there would be an answer from police or fire, which we can't really compel them to do. It's maybe state statute could compel them from another angle, but not from a zoning
May
angle.
not like their comments.
Yeah.
May not
Yeah,
necessarily agree with them.
I would encourage, Mr. Chairman, that we vote tonight if possible. I don't expect the responses from the police and fire will be different than what they have already provided us, and I'm concerned that their timeliness may not fall respectively into our needs as well. Certainly they don't work on our timetable. Again, I don't want to, I know how I'm going to vote, but I'm also sensitive to the fact that we have been here several times and people are here, and I would like for us to be able to move forward with other applications that we have forward and bring this to a close, let the applicant do what he needs to do, and let us move forward.
I definitely would like to see a final site plan review if a affirmative vote passes, and also stipulated proper fire and building code and police review.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to approve the stipulations, final site plan approval, also the installation of the watertight manhole covers, and the maintenance of the drainage system features, along with verification from fire and police as to the safety of the property.
Yes, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Can I request a roll call, please?
Yes. Any other discussion before I call the vote?
Mr. Hibansky, I believe you had a comment?
The commission may want to consider as conditions, should they choose to approve this evening, to incorporate, as a condition of approval, to incorporate the town engineer's recommendations, as well as potentially having a dumpster enclosure or something that's screened from any of the adjoining properties, as well as those living on the site.
I would accept that as a friendly amendment. I think I did. I could be wrong, but the town engineers, I think, were the manhole covers, but I didn't know if there was other to it. But I would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Commissioner Pepin, you're okay as a second?
Yes.
Could I also add one friendly amendment to that as well? Stipulate to have sidewalks on the Hamilton Ave side so we become more in compliance with the plan of conservation and development. That's one thing that the POCD speaks directly to, wherever we can as land use boards, to make the town more walkable, green, and user-friendly. So that's something I would like to suggest as a friendly amendment.
I would also accept that.
I do have one other comment.
Mr. Chairman, can we allow for discussion, because we're still trying to get through amendments?
Yes,
Yeah.
maybe for amendment for a discussion.
Also, does Commissioner Pepin accept the friendly amendment about the sidewalk stipulation on
Yeah,
Hamilton
yes.
Ave? Any other discussion about the motion before us?
Yes, please, thank you. I am not satisfied with this application. I do not believe that it fits the character of the neighborhood, particularly the fact that the properties are only 10 feet apart. I do believe that it will add to the flooding, and it does not mitigate the issue. And I have had lots of experience, as it was presented by one of the speakers, with lots of promises that this will make life better and the flooding will be better, We are aware of the fact that that is a low point and flood area, and that additional care needs to be taken to understand that. I respect the fact that the residents are not trying to eliminate any building. They're not, as in many cases, saying leave it as open space. They've actually come forward with some very credible points to say that 6 units, 8 units, they feel that the traffic and the safety would be acceptable. It could handle the area in terms of emergency response if we needed to get cars out of that lot quickly, the flooding and traffic. I thought those were reasonable compromises by the public to say that we want to work with the developer. I also felt that more space is needed for open space. I do not feel there's enough open space. There is a shortage of open space in the district, and this would eliminate a significant portion of it. Now, I understand that this is not a park, it's private property, but it has been used as open space. I'd like to see more space provided for playground area and common use, whether it be to put playscapes on it or have room at least to put a barbecue pit or something if they need to. It's still a residential neighborhood. I like the parking that they've improved. I like the fact that they've separated those 6 buildings. I think that one duplex is there too many, that I agree with a couple of the speakers that 6 or 8 units are workable. I also feel that the public has been very clear and very strong with some very concrete responses that are not personal, that this does not fit the character of the neighborhood. This is a special case. A special case is here to identify how this fits within the neighborhood and the culture of the neighborhood. And this community has tried very hard to convey what this culture is. A community that cares about their neighborhood, cares about their street, cares about the upkeep, cares about who comes in. They care very deeply that they are taxpayers and want to be treated with the same consideration as any other part of town. And therefore, they've come out in these numbers to show that they care, not to disparage anyone else, but simply to show that they take considerable pride in their property. Most of the houses on that street are single-family homes. Taft is single-family homes. Sherwood, that abuts it, is single-family homes. Most of Hamilton is single-family homes. Can you find multiple families in that area? Yes. And the plan of conservation does say multiple families, but it doesn't require it. It gives it as an option. And I'm asking this commission to consider the fact that this property could be something very nice and could be something that the public and the residents would embrace, and have tried very hard to convey that. Thank you.
Commissioner Phillips, just to be devil's advocate, if I may, we have something that is in compliance to the zoning regulations. This could be 12 units, and there are court cases that speak directly to that. Could you elaborate as to your justification a little further?
Because of our zoning regulations and we like to say one size fits all, but the reason that we are here in this special case is to look at how those regulations fit into the context of the neighborhood. We have had many cases where we have denied applications that have met the requirements, that have fit the requirements, but did not meet the culture and the nature of the community. And we have gone to great lengths to defend our ability to determine how our neighborhoods are developed. Safety is a concern. Flooding is a concern. I understand Mr. Knott's position that this is the town's responsibility. But nevertheless, this is still a concern for the neighborhood. And adding to that does not, responding that this is the town's problem and not his problem does not meet the needs of these folks who are trying to protect their homes. They are made significant, and this is something that's different from other applications. They have made concessions. They have come forward and said, we will work with this. We will do things with this. But we need more concessions, and they have asked pretty consistently for less units. I think that's an opportunity that they should be given.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, as I stated in the past, he has followed all our zoning regulations. He's followed our plan of conservation and easement. He has listened to the concerns of the neighbors. This commission had required separation of buildings, which he's provided. He's gone above and beyond notifying the neighbors based on state statute. State statute dictates how he is mandated to notice and to contact the neighbors. He has gone above and beyond that. He's presented multiple applications. He's made adjustments to their concerns. And again, he's followed every rule that we've laid down. So, I don't know how we can deny it without some type of prejudice to the project or some, factually, it makes all the sense in the world. Emotionally, yeah, maybe there's some fear involved, but factually, I don't know how we can factually say no to this. So, I don't know. I think it's a great project. I think it would improve the neighborhood. I think it improves the drainage. I think adding 8 units or 10 units or 6 units is going to have no marginal impact. If he's got 6 and he's got 10, the difference between the traffic is going to be non-existent between those number of units. And again, he's allowed to, by our zoning regulations, put 12 units. He's only requested 10. I think he's gone out of his way. And as I've seen other projects in the past, typically the fear is there, like Cut Spring Road, like Avalon Bay. And if you talk to any of the people up at Cut Spring Road now who fought that along with the town prior to the affordable housing, which is not Section 8, affordable housing only means a small percentage of the units need to be sold for under market value. It's not Section 8. But prior to that, there was a development that went in, the neighbors came out, they fought it. 5-6 years, the town spent millions and millions of dollars fighting it, from 160 units down to, I believe, 120. Those units are very well maintained. They rented at a very quick pace. And if you talk to the neighbors who live along Cut Spring and those roads, they will tell you, and I know a number of them, that you can't even tell they're there. They've never had traffic issues. They've never had any kind of issues. 160 units, 120 units empty. So the precedence is there. But anyway, I'm in favor of it, as I'm sure you've all figured by now. But I think mine are based on our rules and regulations as opposed to the emotions and fears that I see run alongside many of these applications.
Any other discussion?
If we just stipulate that the police, traffic, and fire department comment, I'm ready to vote too tonight.
I think we did.
And there's also final site plan review, which would also allow for that as well.
My last comment in just response to that, one of the things that Mr. Hendrick just said is that when we fought the Cut Spring, the developer came back with less units. Your point has been that this developer has gone out of his way. I would disagree with that. He's separated the buildings, but he's always maintained the same number of units. He has not made an offer or an effort to reduce the number of units, which was the prime response of the neighborhood. He has also not reached out to the community as much as you had said. He's sent a few letters, but he's never held meetings. He's never responded to some of the offers from the neighbors to meet with them. So I disagree, and most of the neighbors here said today that they haven't even seen this new plan. Fortunately enough, I'm ready to vote on it, but I would disagree that this developer has gone above and beyond. 10 units has always been the number of units, whether they've been together or they've been separated or they've been reconfigured. The plan essentially has not changed other than the placement of the blocks on the map. And that is my exact point that you just made with Cut Spring. That property went from, what did you say, 160 units back to what? 120 units? And everybody was happy? Well, if this developer went from 10 units to 8 units or even 6 units, as one of the gentlemen had said, he would be delighted. This is not a case of not in my backyard or fears. This is a case where the residents understand what is good for their neighborhoods, and we're here to elect. They elected us to represent their neighborhoods, and I am doing my best to represent my neighborhood to know this is what is best for the neighborhood, not to defend my neighborhood to say it's not my backyard. That's not what this is. And I ask that you all consider that. Thank you.
Just for clarification, the original development on Cut Spring Road was 14 units. The developer came in, after the 14 units were chased away by the neighborhood, the developer came in with 160 units, and after years of fighting and millions of dollars, they came in with 120 units. The 14 units would have been preferable to the 120 units, but because the neighbors came out in uproar, the property went to affordable housing and ended up with 120 units instead of 14 units. That was the point I was making.
And just a point for clarification for members of the public who are here, affordable housing holds many different definitions and many different connotations. The specific affordable housing, if you come next meeting in May, we actually have an 830G affordable housing, not this property up on James Farm Road. 830G affordable housing, which you read a lot about in the newspaper, is a state regulation. It's a state law where 30% of the units have to be affordable, 60% of market rate, and 80% of market rate. The rest could be market rate. And there's a lot of different opinions on that. I'm not going to get on the analysis and soapbox of state affordable housing, but that is not Section 8. Section 8 is a federal HUD, Housing and Urban Development definition, which goes through a whole different process. Sometimes they don't even go before zoning. There's a whole federal regulatory mechanism to that. I've never seen in my time on the zoning commission, which is almost 2.5 years, a Section 8 application come before this board during my time here. Maybe it did in the past, but not during my time on this board or Commissioner Pepin's time on this board. So there's Section 8 in affordable housing is 830G are two very different applications. So just for public education purposes and public clarification purposes.
And thank you for making that distinction. This is not an affordable application, and if the inference that we don't approve this means that the applicant will come back with an affordable application, that's essentially a threat. And that is not what we're ruling on here. We are ruling on what is best for the neighborhood, what is best for the residents who live there, not by a threat from a developer who says, well, if you don't do it my way, this is what I'm going to do. And our fear, as you put it, of what might happen is the only reason that we make a ruling. If doing the right thing means that we are protecting our residents, we do it regardless, not because we're afraid of the cost.
Okay.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. My client made no such...
Mr. Knott, you do not have the floor. Mr. Knott, you do not have the floor.
Mr. Chairman? Just for clarification, Mr. Lanza at no point or at no time made mention of affordable housing. It was a parallel that I was trying to draw. It's just a parallel that I was trying to draw through my own conversation, not something that Mr. Lanza ever had discussed.
And for clarification purposes, any property could be subject to an 830G application. So, I mean, it could happen anywhere.
Mr. Urbanski, was an application for affordable housing pulled at the zoning office by the applicant?
Couldn't hear with the crackle.
Was there an 830G?
Was an application requested or pulled from the zoning office from the applicant for affordable housing?
Someone, the applicant did come into our office and picked up an application to the zoning commission. They were inquiring about the application.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. This isn't pertinent to the discussion.
Yeah. Until such an application is received, we do not know, which will be a future zoning application independent of this review. That will be its own application under its own set of conditions and rules. So that is independent of this particular petition.
And I would say that any kind of talk about affordable housing right now really is irrelevant and independent of this application. We shouldn't even be speaking about affordable housing or using it as a point of reference when we should be deciding about the application in front of us, 164 Hamilton Avenue.
I would beg to differ because it was raised in public testimony. There was a fear of a Section 8 application pertinent to this particular property. So it is part of the public record. And a lot of the discussion was based on past zoning precedents and past zoning decisions and an explanation for public information and public education of what different affordable housings are.
Mr. Chairman, the point of my discussion, and I guess I wasn't being heard clearly, was to point out that the original fear of Cut Spring Road was that 14 units was going to devastate their neighborhood and create unbearable traffic. Then through the process, 120 units were built on that property. My point being that although those residents had initial fear of the 14 units, and through the process 120 units got developed, which is 10 times, approximately 9 times, the amount of the original application. After that 9-time more density, the residents realized that their fears were unfounded and that even the 120 units that were built on that property did not create the loss of quality of life that they feared with just the 14 units. That was my point I was trying to make parallel to. I wasn't trying to veil it as a threat. I was trying to point out that I appreciate and understand the fears of the residents of these 10 units. But looking at history and comparing it to what happened on Cut Spring Road, where the density turned out to be 9 times more their initial fear, and then they realized their fear was unfounded. That was the parallel I was trying to make, that perhaps the fear that the people of Hamilton Avenue are feeling is unfounded, and I tried to use that property as a parallel to give them something to compare it to.
So
that was the only point of my comment. It had nothing to do with Mr. Lanza threatening it. It had nothing to do with trying to scare the residents. I was trying to only suggest that there is history in this town that shows the fear that they feel is sometimes unwarranted, and once the project develops, it's never as bad as you think it was going to be.
And just to kind of, well, it doesn't necessarily have to be affordable. Let's throw affordable housing out the window. The Holly Lane condo units, which aren't affordable, I remember there was a lot of opposition to those units, and once they got built in, they became ingrained into that neighborhood. In my district, Grace Lane, which is right off of Nichols Avenue, right by the school, it's a little cul-de-sac, but it's 4 or 5, maybe even 6 houses that were just all of a sudden developed almost overnight, if you will. Maybe not. There's a lot of process to it. But there was a lot of concern about that. All of a sudden, there's 6 houses right there. I remember conversations about that. Now they're ingrained in the neighborhood. So just to kind of collaborate that with Commissioner Henrik, that sometimes initial fears are that. Sometimes because there's always fear of the unknown. There's always fear of the uncertain. We all think it. Every time we hear some sort of big change, it's natural to ask questions. It's natural to have concerns. But when we look at empirical evidence, that's what should guide our decisions.
Mr. Chairman, that discussion on affordable housing did not come from the public. I think it was inappropriate for Mr. Hendrick to use that as an analogy. It introduced fears. It introduced possibly some of his rationale, but it was inappropriate for this discussion.
Mr. Chairman, the only appropriate discussion is this motion, not a discussion on.
And I want to comment to the fact the public did not talk to fears. They talked about safety. They talked about basically health and safety and the character of the community and the neighborhood directly in that block. So they were pretty clear about it. This was not a fear. The only fear that's being introduced is coming from Mr. Hendrick and his analogy as to why he thinks that this application should be supported.
That's it. Any other discussion on the motion? If not, I'm calling the vote. We'll start from District 1.
Pass.
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Poster, do you want to take a vote now? Yes.
No.
Motion being special case, motion fails 3-2. This one, the special case requires a 4-vote majority from the zoning commission, therefore the application is hereby denied. With that said, we'll go into the approval of the minutes for April 11, 2016. Do I have a motion to take off the floor?
It's not on the table. Motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. There's no coastal area management plan. Any zoning enforcement study concerns or constituent complaints? Any, I take it there's no accessory apartments or sediment and erosion applications? This takes us to the pickle barrel. Appointed zoning Commissioner Hibaski, could you please just briefly explain what the pickle barrel is trying to do?
Sure. What I'll do is I'll pass around the...
Mr. Chairman, can we just give them 5 minutes
Yeah,
for them
we'll take
to...
a 5-minute recess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
Thank
that
you.
would be good. And I could use a recess.
Okay.
10:08 p.m. So I take it there's no coastal area site plan review, no zoning, well, zoning enforcement studies, any sort of constituent concern or complaints that come up, really from the commission or from staff if someone has a zoning complaint. So I take it there's none of those.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Zoning enforcement studies were number 3 on the agenda. That's really like for any sort of zoning complaints that might come up in your district or town-wide. If we want to talk about them on the board, someone has an improper garage or accessory apartment or something like that.
Since we didn't hear any comment, I'd suggest we move on.
Yeah. I take it there's no accessory apartment application, no sediment and erosion control application. So this takes us right to the Pickle Barrel on 1889 Main Street. Planning and Zoning Commissioner Hibansky, Administrator, could you just briefly explain what the Pickle Barrel is seeking from the commission?
Sure, and I'll pass around their proposal that they have submitted to me. It's basically 4 tables with umbrellas out front of their facility. They do this every year. They do every year what every town every establishment should be doing every year, but they decide to do it every year. So we're very happy that they've chosen to give the commission the opportunity to weigh in. I will pass it along.
I make the motion.
We do.
Before we make a motion, just want to give some past precedents, and Commissioner Peppin, you were on the commission with us too. It was explained to us that the commission actually ruled that you only need one approval, one request, and then there was a year probation period, then you request it again, then you just get it in perpetuity. So I would make a condition that this is approved, but they don't have to come back to us again about outdoor, unless if they're looking to change something from what we approved.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept this with the changes, the ability, the permissions, and perpetuity.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? I have discussion. It's also consistent with right across the street with Gaetano's.
It is
I know it's Mr. P's, but it's Main Street Tavern now.
This is consistent with what, as Mr. Herbansky has said, every single
Yeah.
restaurant, in fact, what we encourage.
Just, when you say in perpetuity, and I was under the impression that we gave administrative authority to make the approval in the event that there were issues or concerns. It wasn't just...
It wasn't a commission level approval, it was a staff
No,
level.
it was once you get the approval, you have to reapply every year, but the administration could approve it, and that gave the administration the opportunity
Okay.
to oversee the fact as to whether there were issues
So it becomes
from the
a
previous
staff
year.
review.
Because in some instances, people with outdoor seating have created issues. So that's why my perception was we gave administrative authority to approve to the administration.
So it was more of a staff review at that point as opposed to a commission level review. Is that a friendly amendment to Commissioner Phillips and Commissioner Pepin's motion? It's not in perpetuity, but just to leave at staff level review.
Yes, I accept it. It makes perfect sense.
But it is as, who did the second?
Commissioner Pepin did.
But we did give that to them, so we don't necessarily need
Yeah.
to see these.
Yeah.
It's just following the standard.
It should be, I agree with Mr. Hendrick. It should be staff level approval at this point going forward.
Yeah, I remember the way how it's been handled in the past 2.5 years is usually, say you didn't have outdoor seating. You'd write a letter to the commission reviews it, gives it the approval, and then there's the 1-year probationary period where they re-up to the commission again, and once that hits its point, it was at the staff discretion, which is something I think we ought to, empower our staff to use their good judgment.
I think we all agree with you.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, one more point about the outdoor seating, though. One of the things we had done in the past was to ensure that the outdoor seating allowed 5 feet from their barrier or from their outside point to a planting, whether it was, and not necessarily just a tree, but whether it was the dirt. Because the 5 feet allowed passage of people walking in opposite directions.
Would that be a reinforcement of a regulation on the books? Is there something?
I don't know that Mr. Urbanski is aware, so I'm just let him know from the past that, and I know people have encroached on that to some extent, so, but, like on Main Street and on some other spots, it's critical that we have that 5 feet, so just
Absolutely.
as you review those, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that would make it consistent with all of our approvals. Okay, point of order, I have to recuse myself for the 1980 Main Street. My insurance broker is a tenant of that particular building, so Commissioner Phillips, could you please chair for that one motion? I'll step outside in the hallway while you're doing that.
Actually, I don't have, this is the 16,
1980 Main Street.
Number 7 on the work agenda.
no, I don't have number 7. Do you know that?
I can hand pass it over to you.
Passing that down.
Is that the double diamond one?
Yes.
This is the double diamond, yeah. I just don't have it on my agenda.
Number 7.
Okay, I am filling in for Commissioner Fuller as pro temp as he steps out of the office, out of the room for the record. We're going to begin the discussion of the request for a one-year extension to file for the building permits to use the 3rd floor for office and storage at 1980 Main Street.
Just for discussion, but can we get some clarification? Which one is 1980 Main Street? Are you aware?
Offhand, I don't know the exact location of 1980.
I mean, I know we take.
Trying to think.
All right, if we don't know, I mean, we typically extend these anyways, just as a point of order. So I would make a motion to approve.
There's a motion on the floor to approve. Is there a second?
Yep.
Any discussion? No discussion. Hearing no discussion, I'll call a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Hearing no one opposed, the chair votes yes. Motion passes. Mr. Fuller?
Very orderly.
Thank you to Vice Chair Phillips to preside over that particular agenda item. This takes us now into number 8 on our agenda, planning projects. First, number 1, Greenway. Don't know if Commissioner Pepin as our liaison.
Yeah, we haven't heard from the police department on our traffic advisory meeting, so I just emailed John Casey, but I guess he's been on vacation. So as soon as we hear from that, we will let you know what they say.
Complete Streets, there was a meeting last week. I know there's a lot of different public officials and town volunteers involved with this. Don't know if Jay Hibensky wants to give us kind of just a little recap of what's intended out of this.
Sure. Well, it's really just to create a network of more connected and accessible public right-of-ways throughout the town of Stratford. But this study is really going to be focusing on the half-mile walk shed, or the half-mile radius from the train station. So we'll be having a 4-day intensive design charrette, which will be open to all the public. It'll be at the Baldwin Center from May 31st to June 3rd. Everyone is welcome to attend. We've got Alta Design and Planning. They're a national planning firm working on it. I've worked with them before. They're excellent. So we're really lucky to have them. And
I was at, just for comment, I was at that meeting too, so very positive. It's going to help our greenway and connect everything, so.
And we're looking for information
Yeah.
from all of Stratford, not just the half mile, because like I said, this is to build the foundation for a much broader network of more accessible sidewalks and more pleasing, well-designed streetscapes.
What I'd like to do is formalize that Commissioner Pepin be our representative to the Complete Streets. She's done an admirable job with the Greenway
I
as
believe
far as...
we are all invited to partake in that. If I remember seeing the email chain distributed to all commissioners and alternates too, so we could all serve on
Yeah,
that. There's minutes, it is a committee.
Okay.
So we don't have to worry about the quorum requirements here, but we're not wearing our zoning hats per se. We're wearing Complete Streets Committee or Task Force, whatever it's formally called.
I understand, but I think it is prudent to have at least one member of the Land Use Board from zoning be more recognized as representing the Land Use Board, even though we are all able to attend and speak. And I was recommending that Commissioner Pepin be our representative if she so chooses to accept.
I'll accept.
I don't know if we need to formalize this with a vote. I think it's kind of...
I'll probably be going to all the meetings and kind of connect.
The only reason why I missed that
I
one...
can just make reports.
The only reason why I missed that
Basically,
meeting, because that was my second day of work in Stratford, which has a lot of walkability. But that provides an interesting opportunity of seeing how one city's doing it as opposed to we're
very
doing
good
it. And there's things we're doing better than Stratford.
It's a great program.
Yeah.
I see all kinds
Also,
of
just want to note that this is consistent with both TOD, not TOD as in zoning, but TOD as in economic development, and the plan of conservation and development. That is the real focus, is like, how do you really make the center kind of, how do you have multi-use and foot traffic gravitate towards that? And Complete Streets is one way to allow for more biking and foot traffic, skateboard, whatever, the young ones are doing today. Just to do that, it's and also to just really kind of think about how do we really revitalize probably the biggest, outside of the Army engine plant, probably the biggest economic question in this town in terms of long-term development. I just want to inform, I hope we inform that committee that it's going to be tough for the zoning commissioners to make it on the 31st at the Baldwin because of James Park Road.
I think they're there earlier, though. They're there like all day, aren't they?
All day. It's
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
it's
so
all day.
8:30 to 4:30. We know it's
Yeah.
difficult for anybody who's working to make it. That's why we wanted to
Yeah.
make sure we had it at the Baldwin Center, so that
So it's
senior
8:30 to 4:30?
8:30 to 4:30 from May 31st to June 3rd. And if Commissioner Pepin cannot make any of the meetings as the commission's representative, I'd be happy to pass
I'm
along
sure
a
I'll be
recap
there
of
at some point.
of whatever goes on.
Several of them. So.
Well, that's gonna be tough.
Mr. Chairman, since we have an administrative session in just a couple of weeks, I'd like to not have our goal settings tonight and do that at the administrative session. I make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, yeah. Anyone else feel comfortable with that? We'll just go straight to the adjournment. Do I have a second to Commissioner Posner's motion to adjourn? I'll second that. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We're hereby adjourned at 10:21 p.m. See everyone on the 31st, if not sooner.